Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another live episode of Let's Talk on your favorite channel, Huda TV. I'm your host, Arkham Rashid. In this episode, we will be speaking about the art of persuasion. Now, many times when you hear the word persuasion, you tend to think of it with a negative connotation and a negative context. But that's not what we're going to be speaking about here. We're going to break down what persuasion is. So let's start off by welcoming and introducing our wonderful guest for today. On my right hand side, if you can give us your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself. Go ahead, brother.
So I'm a wonderful guest?
Of course you are.
Thank you for that, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, my name is Bilal Abdullah. I am a kindergarten teacher working in an international school here in Cairo, Egypt. Also here as a guest here at the Huda channel.
Wonderful guest.
Thank you, wonderful guest, thank you. Also studying here in Egypt and just living and enjoying the wonderful country.
All right, Bilal, it's lovely to have you on. It's always wonderful having conversations with you.
Thank you.
Brother, next time, if you can give us your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself. Go ahead, inshallah.
I'm Omar Khalid. I'm an Egyptian citizen and I work as a freelance translator.
All right, Omar, welcome back to the show, and it's wonderful
pleasure.
having you on Let's Talk and having these weekly conversations with you,
Thank you
inshallah.
so much.
If we can go over to this side, brother, if you can give us your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself. Go ahead, inshallah.
My name's Idris. I'm also American, and I'm here working in international school also, and studying Arabic and trying to memorize Quran and just live a better life as best I can.
And you're also a wonderful guest.
Yeah.
You can give us your name, where you're from, and a little bit. Brother, next time, if you can give a guest. Brother, next time, if you can give.
Family. Yeah.
All right, welcome to the show, Ilyas. It's always wonderful having these conversations with you guys every week. So, I mean, something I mentioned in my introduction was that the word persuasion, whenever we speak about it, people tend to think of it with a negative connotation. It has this negative connotation to it. Idris, if you can start us off, inshallah, why do you think this negative connotation is there when somebody just hears persuasion, persuasive, this word?
I think it mostly is because people have come to, understand it to mean that you're trying to force a person to do something against their will. That they don't really want to do. You're kind of like con them, you kind of trick them. But this isn't persuasion. This is another word we call manipulation. Trying to manipulate someone is different than trying to persuade them. Because trying to persuade someone, by definition, means you're trying to get them to believe or do something that which benefits them. It's better for them and for yourself. So it's something that I think people just don't understand what it really means.
Yeah,
and
so
they use the word incorrectly.
They mix both words together as if it's one word. Ilyas, what's your thoughts on that? Why do you think it has a negative connotation?
Very similar to Idris, actually. I think people just look at persuasion and manipulation synonymously. Even just before discussing the show, I had the same connotations myself. I had the same thing. But if you actually think of, what it actually means linguistically, then there is in essentially become opposites. So and I think the reason why we look at it from a negative point of view, because we usually are persuaded to do things that we don't want to do, or to do things that initially we didn't want to do, whereas sometimes that could work in our favor. So I think that the two words are opposites, but they're actually looked at synonymously.
And I think another thing that we should keep in our minds is that even if persuasion could be used in a bad way, there's still good ways to use persuasion. Like Idris mentioned that sometimes people try to persuade somebody, like a mother tries to persuade her child that this is the right thing for you to do because she has experience. She knows that she wants the best for her child, whereas the child might not make the best decision. So this is a type of persuasion, and this is exactly what we want to focus on here. I mean, we don't want to focus on any negatives. We don't want you to persuade people in a negative way. That's not what we want here. So basically what we'll start with is some of the negatives and positives of persuasion. Bilal, if we can start with you, inshallah.
The negative or positives of persuasion? The negatives or positives of persuasion. I think it goes kind of hand in hand. I think a positive of persuasion, it depends upon how it's used. I mean, persuasion is trying to get someone to believe something or to do something. And if I try to It depends upon what the end result is. You know, like dawah. I'm persuading you to, if I'm calling you to believe in Islam with good speech, what's the end result of what I'm calling you to? If I'm calling you to Islam, it's good. If I'm calling you to have good behavior, it's good. If I'm calling you to be committed to doing something that's good for you, to good behavior, to good grades in school, to not do something bad or harmful, to hurt someone, to be a good person, to not commit a crime, is good. If I'm calling you to commit a crime, to hurt someone, to do something that may harm yourself, obviously it's bad. So persuasion is all about what the end result is. You know, I mean, we have, you know, it's all about what the end result is to me.
Omar, if we can go to you, what do you think are some of the negatives and positives of persuasion itself?
Okay, sure. Well, persuasion, of course, as Brother Bilal said, that the most important thing is the end result and the intention, and that you don't want to harm somebody and so on. But I have another perspective.
Of course.
Because we are not only human beings based on logical ways of thinking and that's it. We have emotional sides. And this is the way the media, or some of the media, not of course not Huda TV, of course. Huda TV is an exception. But lots of the media in the world, maybe in other countries or even in any country here in Egypt and so on, they try to work on the emotions of people. They don't talk to logical, the logical side of us as human beings. So this is a negative side. This is something wrong. This is not something correct. This is against our morality. But also we can learn from this that we have to talk to the emotions of others. That maybe I have something logical, but somebody's not going to listen to me. Why? Because maybe I have a tense voice. So that's going to convey the message to him that he's going to be tense also. He's going to be filled with tension. So the message itself, the way that I transfer the emotions is very important.
And before we get into the skills of persuasion, what I want to mention is I want to start off with one of the skills that I think it's very important. And before we actually get into the skills, a better word for it would be enlighten. That, you show people the way to do things and you enlighten them that this is the better way or the right way to do something. Now, sometimes a person might think, like we give the example of a mother and a child. The child might not know what's right for him, so the mother enlightens her child, and that is, in fact, persuading her child. We can call it whichever word we want to use, but that the action is the same action. So one of the skills I think that's very important is to make the person that you are trying to persuade feel as if he's coming to this decision himself. And I think this is very important because many times you act as if it's just total commands. Like, do this, do your homework. Instead of trying to work with the person. So, you give them, okay, what happens when you do your homework? What do we get out of doing your homework? So you make that person that you are trying to convince or persuade get to that end result, get to that decision by himself. And this way, that each and every person you're trying to convince or persuade, they feel as if they have reached this decision themselves. Nobody wants to be forced an opinion. Nobody wants to feel like, okay, I'm doing this because, my boss said I have to do it. But if the boss makes you realize that this is important for the company, you're going to do it. Why? Because you want to do it now. So you have to convince the person that they want to do it. And the way to do that, like we said, is to work with them. Idris, I'm going to come over to you, inshallah, if you can give us a skill or two that you think it's important.
I think I can give you two that really stick out in my head. And one of them is first build a rapport with the person. Build a relationship with the person, because often people don't tend to, whatever you want to call it, persuasion, enlightenment, guidance, they don't want to take it from someone who they don't feel, if there's a wall between us. Like if you're my boss and I'm the worker, a lot of times, just tell me what I need to do for work. I don't need your personal guidance. Why? Because they don't have that rapport. But sometimes you might have a boss you don't feel like he's a boss. You feel like he's almost equal. And sometimes you're reminded he's the boss, but a lot of times you don't. So this person may give you advice, something not to do with work, and you may take it, because why you have that relationship with each other. And the second thing is that make sure that you remain truthful. Because you can't, be persuading, enlightening, guiding by lies. Because at the end of the day, when that person finds out that you told a lie, they're going to feel manipulated,
Yep.
not persuaded that you're giving them, you weren't calling them towards what was better for them. You're just a con man.
Yeah.
So you need to stick to the truth and tell people the truth and tell them the truth that nobody else will tell them. You know, we always have that one, wingman who just pulls your card when you're out of line. Everyone else just kind of like, I don't want to hurt his feelings. But your one friend's like, hey, come here.
It's like
Yeah.
Idris, you got
Yeah.
booger there.
You got that one friend who always pulls you straight and tells you, look, this is how it is. You need that. This is what will help you, guide you, and give you the great way to follow.
Yeah, and just to stipulate something to that rule, and it's very important, is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he says that none of you will be true believers until you love for your brothers and sisters what you love for yourself. So that's very important when it comes to persuading somebody. You're not trying to manipulate him, meaning you're not trying to make him do something that's not going to benefit him. And when you apply this hadith to that situation, that I want what's best for him. And that's what I'm going to convince him to do, and not manipulate him to do something that I wouldn't do myself.
And just to add, another key thing is not only what's best for him, it's what's best for him and me.
Yeah, of course.
It's not like you're left out of the equation. It's actually, in reality, when you're persuading someone, you're bringing them to that which is best for them and for yourself.
Yeah.
So you're actually a part of it. You shouldn't be, calling someone to that which is evil, because it will affect you one way or another.
Yeah.
People don't think about it at that angle sometimes.
Yeah. Ilyas, if we can move to you, inshallah, what are some skills that you think a person should have?
Skills, or are we talking about the positive?
No, skills.
Okay, I think one of the skills that comes to my mind is not being, you could touch this briefly, not being forceful. And there's a difference between persuading someone and compelling someone.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we're trying to persuade someone to do something, we're just focused on, okay, I'm right and the other person is wrong, or the other person should be doing what I'm doing. And when it gets to that situation, then it just becomes, we enforce our opinions on other people, and the persuasion stops. And subhanAllah, Allah, He mentions to the Prophet ﷺ, فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِمُصَيْتِرْ. Allah said, remind, because you're a reminder, but you're not someone who's an overpowerer.
Yeah.
You're not a compeller. All the Prophet ﷺ had to do was convey the message, and then that's where his role stops. You can't force people.
Yep.
So I think that's one of the key skills when trying to persuade someone to do something. You need to have the rapport, as Idris mentioned, but also you can't just enforce your opinion on someone, because then it just becomes, one way.
Yep.
For effective communication has to go both. So I think that's.
And just to relate that to something that we can all, picture in our minds, because we generally like to bring an example and then give a vivid example to the people so they can understand what we're actually talking about. Let's take, for instance, a parent when he's trying to teach their children how to pray. So parents, when they're trying to teach their children how to pray. Now, if they just force their opinion on the child, you have to pray, okay, without trying to help them understand, this prayer will last as long as that enforcer is there. So your boss, when he's trying to make you do something, long as he's in the room, you're going to be working, you're on the computer, you're doing the work. As soon as you see him step out, boom, you're just like, yeah, he's not the boss of me. He's not here, he's not watching me, that's it. But that's not the purpose of it. When you're trying to teach that child to pray, when you want people in your company to work, you need to do it in a way that they understand why they're doing it. And this relates, they're all connected, all these points, that you make the first person feel that he wants to do this. You show him the reason why this is the better choice. Now, before we continue our conversation, we're going to watch a short video clip, so stay tuned.
For over 60 years, and there can be no doubt that there's a science to how we are persuaded. And a lot of this science is surprising. When making a decision, it would be nice to think that people consider all the available information in order to guide their thinking. But the reality is very often different. In the increasingly overloaded lives we lead, more than ever, we need shortcuts or rules of thumb to guide our decision making. My own research has identified just 6 of these shortcuts as universals that guide human behavior. They are reciprocity, scarcity, authority, consistency, liking, and consensus. Understanding these shortcuts and employing them in an ethical manner can significantly increase the chances that someone will be persuaded by your request. Let's take a closer look at each in turn.
So, the first universal principle of influence is reciprocity. Simply put, people are obliged to give back to others the form of behavior, gift, or service that they have received first. If a friend invites you to their party, there's an obligation for you to invite them to a future party you are hosting. If a colleague does you a favor, then you owe that colleague a favor. And in the context of a social obligation, people are more likely to say yes to those that they owe. One of the best demonstrations of the principle of reciprocation comes from a series of studies conducted in restaurants. So the last time you visit a restaurant, there's a good chance that the waiter or waitress will have given you a gift. Probably at about the same time that they bring your bill. A liqueur perhaps, or a fortune cookie, or perhaps a simple mint. So here's the question. Does the giving of a mint have any influence over how much tip you're going to leave them? Most people will say no, but that mint can make a surprising difference. In the study, giving diners a single mint at the end of their meal typically increased tips by around 3%. Interestingly, if the gift is doubled and 2 mints are provided, tips don't double. They quadruple, a 14% increase in tips. But perhaps most interestingly of all is the fact that if the waiter provides 1 mint, starts to walk away from the table, but pauses, turns back, and says, "For you nice people, here's an extra mint," tips go through the roof. A 23% increase, influenced not by what was given, but how it was given. So the key to using the principle of reciprocation is to be the first to give and to ensure that what you give is personalized and unexpected.
The second universal principle of persuasion is scarcity. Simply put, people want more of those things they can have less of. When British Airways announced in 2003 that they would no longer be operating the twice-daily London-New York Concorde flight because it had become uneconomical to run, sales the very next day took off. Notice that nothing had changed about the Concorde itself. It certainly didn't fly any faster, the service didn't suddenly get better, and the airfare didn't drop. It had simply become a scarce resource, and as a result, people wanted it more. So when it comes to effectively persuading others using the scarcity principle, the science is clear. It's not enough simply to tell people about the benefits they'll gain if they choose your products and services. You'll also need to point out what is unique about your proposition and what they stand to lose if they fail to consider your proposal.
Our third principle of influence is the principle of authority, the idea that people follow the lead of credible, knowledgeable experts. Physiotherapists, for example, are able to persuade more of their patients to comply with recommended exercise programs if they display their medical diplomas on the walls of their consulting rooms. People are more likely to give change for a parking meter to a complete stranger if that requester wears a uniform rather than casual clothes. What the science is telling us is that it's important to signal to others what makes you a credible, knowledgeable authority before you make your influence attempt. Of course, this can present problems. You can hardly go around telling potential customers how brilliant you are, but you can certainly arrange for someone to do it for you. And surprisingly, the science tells us that it doesn't seem to matter if the person who introduces you is not only connected to you, but also likely to prosper from the introduction themselves. One group of real estate agents were able to increase both the number of property appraisals and the number of subsequent contracts that they wrote by arranging for reception staff who answered customer inquiries to first mention their colleagues' credentials and expertise. So, customers interested in letting a property were told, "Lettings? Let me connect you with Sandra, who has over 15 years' experience letting properties in this area." Customers who wanted more information about selling properties were told, "Speak to Peter, our head of sales. He has over 20 years' experience selling properties. I'll put you through now." The impact of this expert introduction led to a 20% rise in the number of appointments and a 15% increase in the number of signed contracts. Not bad for a small change informed from persuasion science that was both ethical and cost.
I enjoyed that short video clip on persuasion skills. Now, we were actually speaking about persuasion skills ourselves, and we mentioned a couple of them. Umar, let's start with you, inshallah, if you can share some of the skills you had in mind.
I have two skills in my mind. The first one is being a good listener. And this continues something that you said about that you have to understand the needs of those who you try to persuade them. Because if I'm a leader, as you said, and tell them go do their work and go out of the room, they're not going to do it. Why? Because I didn't know their needs, what they want exactly from this job or what they want from this task. I have another thing. I was reminded by one of the points here in this video about reciprocity. There's something very interesting about this point. There's something I think it's in psychology called cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance means that if we have behaviors and we have thoughts. If they contradict with each other, there's a problem. We feel that we are not balanced. So he said that to not only to give like awards or something, presents to people, no, to make them do something for you. Why is it good for persuasion? Because if I try to ask them for something, that makes them feel that they are superior, that, well, oh, he needs me. So when he tries to go and help me, if he hates me or something, he's going to think about it. How can I give this guy something and I hate him? So he's going to start to love me because he cannot have this contradiction between the behavior and the thought that's in his mind.
That's actually quite interesting. And everything is connected, you know, like we said in the beginning, each of these points connect with each other, and that's why when you have all the points and all these skills, it makes you somebody who's able to persuade people in a good way, and inshallah using these skills in a good way.
Of course.
Bilal, if we can get some of the skills you had in mind, go ahead, inshallah.
Some of the skills, well, I think one would be listening was great. I was thinking of listening. I think along with listening is respecting others' viewpoints. I mean, because if you're going to persuade someone and you're talking to others, obviously, if you're persuading someone, you have a goal. You're having a conversation. You're listening. There's a two-way conversation. You have to respect someone else's viewpoint, and you have to respect the viewpoint, and you have to be able to hear someone out and to have a real one-on-one discourse, if you understand what I mean, with the individual, and to actually, like, I mean, I kind of want to copy him, but it's like you have to actually listen to what someone is saying and to be able to answer what their needs are. Like, it's like if you're, I mean, it applies to a marriage, or if you have children, or if you're listening to an employee, or a co-worker, or a friend, or a parent, or any kind of relationship where you're trying to get something out of someone, or you're trying to help someone. I think the problem that many people have is just connecting with someone else, you know, some kind of empathy or sympathy with another person. Most of the time when we have a problem with someone, it's a problem of connection, you know, and usually sometimes when we're trying to, I think, get something out of someone, the issue is there's some kind of disconnection. Why am I having a problem with someone? You know, there's a disconnection somewhere. And I'm trying to persuade them to get some kind of behavior from them. And I'm trying to get some corrective actions happening. So I'm trying to persuade them that, hey, I need this from you, I need that from you. I want to go in this direction or that direction. So this is what I need from you. So what can we do? What do we need to do to go in the right direction? And the problem is most of the time, people aren't really listening to the other one. It's just a matter of, okay, you're not doing this, I want you to do this. And most of the time, the problem is we're not listening to the other one. It's just do this, do it now, and we're blinded to whatever the other person is feeling on the other end.
There's no communication.
Exactly. So it's actually, you get a lot more out of someone if you're actually connecting to them, understanding what they're feeling, and reciprocating. I mean, there were a lot of great words in the video too, like reciprocity and understanding and listening. And you get a lot out of someone if you give them a little bit of what they need to feel validated. And just, okay, you have a problem with that? That's your issue? Okay, listen, here. You really need this. This is what's really bothering you. here. Okay, now can we move forward? And then usually you'll find that people will generally will move forward in the direction that you need them to.
And that, you know, one of the points you said there is that you should give people what they need as well, because that shows that you're not trying to persuade them for a selfish, you know, purpose. And that's exactly where manipulation comes in, that you're not trying to use this person. It's whatever you're trying to persuade him to do is for his benefit as well. And that's the key. That's very important, because that's what distinguishes between manipulation and persuasion in a good way. And when you make this person feel important, that, okay, you know, this is not only for me, this is for you as well. This benefits you as a person. When somebody in charge of a company, one of his employees, he tells him, okay, do it this way. Why? This is more efficient. It's going to help you with your work. You're not going to have to spend 3 extra hours trying to finish the same task. So I think it's very important. And one of the things I want to re-emphasize on and reiterate, that when you force somebody to do something and they don't want to do it, they will only do that action until you are present, until the person that's forcing them is with them. But when you enlighten them that this is the way to go about, then they will continuously do this action because they believe in themselves that this is the right way to do something. Now, before we take this conversation any further, we're going to go for a short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Let's Talk. Now, before we went for that short break, we were discussing some of the skills that a person should have when he's trying to persuade somebody to do something. And after we go through these skills, inshallah, we will speak about what is the need for persuasion. Why should one even bother persuading somebody else? Idris, if you can share some of the skills, and then maybe Brother Ilyas, and we'll get into our next question after that.
Just to sort of add, and you know, to what was already been said about, you know, as they said, you shouldn't talk to someone. When I'm trying to persuade, give you advice, nasiha, or many words that we've used, when I'm trying to do it, I shouldn't talk to you. It has to be a two-way conversation, and understand where the person's coming from, as they said. Don't talk to them, talk with them. You should have a conversation with them. This is one of the things you learn when you take a conversation class or a listening skill class, about learning about how to listen, because it's actually a skill that a lot of people don't have. They really don't have it, especially in some parts of the world. They really lack this listening skill. And the second thing I would say is to speak clearly and know what you're talking about. If you start talking and try to persuade someone or give them advice, and it's so complicated that even you don't even know what you're talking about in the end, how do you expect them to follow it? The rule of thumb that I used to give I had an Arabic teacher. He would destroy me when I was memorizing Quran. And I told him, look, I'm not an Arab. Start easy with me. Don't start as if I already know Arabic.
Didn't you say your wife teaches you Quran?
Now she does. But talking about before in the past. So one of the advices I used to give them is that, you know what, understand your audience. You have to know what you're doing when you give it to them. Understand it, and understand that, you know, you're clear, because you may be clear in your mind, but you're speaking in like you're a scientist. It's like me coming to you speaking about nuclear fission.
Yeah, of course.
You'd be thinking like, what are you talking about? The rule is, you should be able to explain it to a child. And this child should be able to explain it to an adult, exactly what you told them. If they can't explain it to them, then you're making it too complicated. Keep it simple, stay on point, and find a foundation, and that way people can connect to you and understand you.
And that relates to the idea of speaking to every person on their level. And I think that's very important, because like you said, if you speak to somebody who can't understand things in depth, and you're trying to use all these big words, and you're just confusing him. He's just like, he's just shaking his head. Yeah, of course, I'll do it.
And they're thinking, I'm not coming back here ever again.
Exactly. Like, I'm not talking to this guy again.
I don't even know what he's talking about.
Ilyas, if you want to share, you know, some skills, a set of skills that you have.
The skill that came to my mind was having the right balance between a stick and the carrot. You know, they say, how do you get a donkey to move? Either hit it with the stick, or you put carrots in front of it so it moves in that way. So I think when we're trying to persuade someone to do something, you have to give them a lot of carrot, or a balance depending on who you're speaking to. Okay, so for example,
in your position.
Yeah.
You can't give him a stick if you're the wrong position.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so if you want to persuade someone, okay, why should they become a Muslim? Well, it's something.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's
of
an
that
important
nature. Yeah,
one.
it's an important
exactly.
one. Okay, you might explain. Look, ultimately you go to paradise, and inshallah you see life in a different way. You'll be more happier in life. You can give them a lot of carrots, but then sometimes a person needs to be told, if you don't submit to Allah, you're going to go to the fire. No, it's a very large stick. I mean, you can tell someone about paradise all day and all night, and you know they might, oh, it's very nice. But once you tell them you might go to the fire, then it might evoke a different reaction in some people. So it depends. And this, even for our children, okay, pray. If you don't pray, X, Y, and Z. Or if you pray, then you'll get X, Y, and Z. You'll get, you know, it might give you a sweet or, you know. So it's about how we approach people, about giving them the rewards. You know, explaining to them why they're doing it and the rewards when they get it. But then at the same time, if you don't do it, then this X, Y, and Z can happen to you. It's not just bombarding people with facts, but it's actually giving people a stick, literally,
Nurturing them,
or giving them the carrot. It's about, and as you said, it's getting people to make that decision themselves, putting them in a position to make that decision based on facts.
Yeah.
You
To
know,
enlighten them.
To enlighten them.
Classic tarbiyah from the Rasulullah.
Yeah.
This is what he did. He didn't force his Sahaba to do things.
Yeah.
He showed them, taught them, and pulled them along, and they followed. He didn't push them. He didn't pull them. He didn't, you know, as you said, he didn't give them too much stick.
No.
This is classic tarbiyah.
In fact, for example, the Prophet said very simply, قُلْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا لَا تُفْلِحُ. Say La ilaha illallah, and then what's the carrot? You know, you'll be successful. You know, it's very, very simple. You know, so when you present something to someone, what's the benefits of it? They need to understand the benefits and the drawbacks if they don't do it. I think that's important.
Yeah, it is, and you know, and that's connected with the concept of leadership. Maybe we'll do an episode on it sometime in the future, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah.
So now, getting to the reason behind persuading somebody. Why is it important? You know, why should a person, you know, persuade somebody? If we can start with you guys, inshallah, on this side, whichever one, Umar or Bilal.
Concept of leadership?
No. Why persuading is important?
Why persuading is important? Persuasion is important because persuasion is a tool. It's an art because it's something that, you know, I mean, it's a good tool for a good purpose if the intention is to lead someone in a good direction for a good outcome. If you need to push someone in the right direction, if you see someone going in the wrong direction, you can say, hey, listen, there's something that, if you want to teach somebody the prayer and you see that they're not motivated, and you say to the individual, listen, you just became Muslim, so now you need to be committed to pray. Yeah, but you know, I don't have time and I don't, yada, yada, yada. So you talk to the person in a way that they understand. Maybe you knew this person before they took the Shahada, and you talk to them in a way that they understand to persuade them to, you know, to learn more. Maybe you know their situation, maybe you understand their personality, and you understand them better than the other people in the masjid or in their area, and how best to talk to them to help them understand the importance of prayer and the importance of time management. I mean, maybe you know them best. Some people are better suited to deal with certain individuals. So some people are better able to talk to me than other individuals, and they know it, you know. So, yeah.
So it is an art, and it is a skill that you know has to be applied correctly and with wisdom. Umar, if we can go to you, why do you think persuasion skills or the art of persuasion itself? Why do you think it's important?
Sure, it's very important because my goal of persuasion is to make the person do things on his own, and that means that I have to have differentiation between two things. In psychology also, they have differences between fixed mindsets and flexible mindsets. So if when I was young, if my mother tells me when I do a homework that you're very smart, actually, okay, that's good. But if she focuses on this, there's a problem.
Yeah, of course.
Why? Because that means that I don't have to do any work. I'm smart. So the point here is to focus on behavior. Oh, excellent work. You really know how to do strategy. You know how to organize your time So I'm focusing on the action that the person is doing. And that will make him go on his own when he grows up. Or even if not, he's a child, if somebody is in a company or so. When I try to tell him, oh, this is a very creative way of doing so and so, and I specify the things that he did, he's going to focus on these things and he's going to make them better in the future. On his own, and he's not going to need my direction.
And you know, that actually reminded me of something. One time I was actually at a seminar of young children education, and basically they were going through some of the points that you should, and some of the skills actually that you should have when you're teaching young children, kindergarten, pre-K. These young children, it's not taught the same way that you teach a third grade class or even an 8th grade class.
Encouraged but not praised.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the teacher that was teaching the class, she said that many times we fall into this trap, and to that day I was falling into this trap, that when a student comes to you, a child, small kid, and he shows you a painting, and you say, wow, that's amazing, that's so beautiful, and you clearly don't think it's beautiful. So you're blatantly lying to this child. But you teach this child not to lie.
Yes.
But you're lying to this child, and now she thinks that you like this and this is an amazing painting. But she said this is not the way to go about. How do we deal with this situation? What do we do then? So she said what you should do is that when the child comes to you with the painting, how is this painting? You say, well, how do you think it is? What do you think of it? And she'll be like, oh, I like it. I like how I did the sun here and I did this. So you let the child express what he thinks of it instead of blatantly lying to the child, oh, it's an amazing painting. It's just like, scribble, scrabble.
I don't even know what it is.
Exactly.
What is that?
Exactly. I'm going to come over to this side. What do you guys think the art of persuasion, why do you think it's an important skill to have?
For me, I think it's important because by nature, not in an absolute form, but by nature, man is lost. Yeah. And you'll need guidance from one way or another. And this guidance often comes from someone who knows better than you in a certain aspect of something. So this person needs to persuade you to the truth, to the better way, because you don't know it. How often has it come to us, and I'm sure all of us have had this, where you think you know, and you feel like you're comfortable. Someone comes to you, and you're like, yeah, I know. And then later on, you're like, wow.
I didn't know.
I didn't know, and that person was right on point. They were, amazing. I'm so happy they came to me. And a lot of people don't realize is that this is how Allah guides sometimes. This is one of His ways of guiding, is having someone come to you with the information. So we have to be perceptive that when someone comes to you, of course it's not always someone coming from Allah giving you guidance, but when it comes, you need to be open to accept it. You can't imagine when someone comes to you immediately, don't be that person that when someone comes to you, you're immediately like, shut up. Why are you even talking to me? Don't be this person, because Allah could be coming to you with guidance and you just shut it down.
Yeah. And that reminds me of a very nice quote by Imam Shafi rahimahullah. He said, the more I learn, the more I realize how little I knew. So it's very interesting. Many times you think, okay, that's it, I know everything in this. And then somebody comes along, like you said, or you open another book and you say, and it says something different. And then you're like, wow, I was fighting people over, whatever I knew and saying, no, this is the way to do it. And now I see this is the way to do it. So that quote is just beautiful. The more I learn, the more I realize how little I knew. SubhanAllah. Ilyas, if we can go to you, why do you think these skills are important?
I agree with everything everyone said, essentially. But just to top it off, I guess I would say that everyone, they think differently. And without persuasion, none of us will be guided to what is better. Right at the beginning of the show, we said that persuasion is to guide someone to something which is better. So, if we wasn't persuading, then we would just stay on that same plane, whereas there's a better way of doing things, or there's an understanding that I didn't know of before that is actually better for me. So, essentially, I believe persuasion is important because it gets us to maximize the goodness in our lives, or sometimes we know maybe more about a subject than someone else does. Yeah, and without persuasion, we won't be able to get them across that line to doing that which is better for them. So I think persuasion is key in getting the best out of everyone's potential. And without persuasion, then it becomes manipulation when we start telling lies to get someone to do something. But that's my viewpoint on it.
Yeah, and I think that just the skill itself is very important, because the way the world works is that people need others.
Yeah.
And people need, everybody needs, you know, somebody. So for example, an owner of a company would need workers. Now, when he gives rules, when he tells people what to do, it can come in three forms. It can either be persuasion, right, which is the right way to do it, meaning you convince the person and you enlighten him that this is the way that you should do something. And at this point, he's content, right? If not, it could be by force. You say, okay, 9 to 5, I want you to do this, this, this. Now, he'll do it.
Yes.
But like we said many times throughout the show, that he's not content with this. This is not what he wants to do. So he's only going to do it as long as you're in charge of him, as long as you're there. Right? That's the second way. And the third way is the one we want to avoid, which is manipulation, which is trying, you know, cheating your way around to make him do something.
Yes.
You know, so I'm going to, inshallah, come to each and every one of you guys and just a last piece of advice for the viewers, inshallah. Ilyas, we can start with you.
Are we regarding persuasion?
Yeah.
I would say that when
Take your time, don't rush yourself. we have time, that's why.
I would say with regards to persuasion, you know, at the end of the day, alhamdulillah, we're Muslims, so we don't mix up persuasion and manipulation. We stay away from manipulation. We don't want to lie to people. We don't want to get people to do things just to serve our, you know, selfish interests, you know. So it's important that we differentiate between the two. And whilst we're persuading, we don't cross the line of enforcing. You know, I think that those three words are really key: persuasion, manipulation, and coercion. You know, so whilst we're persuading, we use our wisdom. You know, we speak to them in a good way, and you know, we try to get people to do things by their own will. You know, and I feel really that's for me. That's what I've taken from the discussion today.
Idris, what's your?
For me, my advice would be for people to realize, you know, because often people think of persuasion as an active skill, something that you know, consciously are doing.
Yeah.
But in reality, it can be a passive skill. You persuade people even whenever you're not even trying to persuade them. And you need to be aware of this.
Perfect.
So you need to try to make sure that when you're influencing someone or paying attention that you are influencing someone when you don't even know you are. Often I'm sure this happened to someone, you influence someone and they're doing something and then you're wondering, oh, they got that from me. I didn't even know you got that from me.
Yeah. And you see this with...
It's more the opposite for me. Someone convinced me of something and they didn't realize that they were actually doing it.
So my advice would be to try to, you know, think about your life and your interactions to make sure that you have the right, you know, ikhlas and sincerity and think about your days. And if you did something for the wrong way, try to correct it. Because sometimes you may do it without thinking. You know, people will say, well, I don't persuade people, you know, I'm not into that. No, you do. You just don't know you are. So it's something that they probably have to think about themselves and their behavior and how it affects people.
And I'm glad you mentioned that point. That's actually a very, very important point that wasn't mentioned throughout our entire conversation. And many times you find maybe somebody looks up to you. And for example, you skip prayers and the person's like, well, you know, I look up to this guy. I know he's a good person and stuff, but he doesn't pray all his prayers. So, you know, it might not be that important. I might not have to pray all my prayers.
It happens.
And exactly. And he's following this person, and this person indirectly convinced him that it's not that important. So that's a very good point that you brought up. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you very much, Idris, for, you know, adding that to our conversation. Let's come over to this side. If you guys can give, you know, one last piece of advice, inshallah, for the viewers.
I would say that when you speak, try your best to make all of your speech beneficial. That's easier said than done. And I make that advice even more so for myself as I do to everyone else out there in the world listening. That's not an easy thing to do. It's very hard. We joke, we laugh, we play, we relax, we become angry, we become childish, we sleep, we're human beings. You know, we have lapses in judgment, the whole 9 yards. But we should try our best to find those times in those moments in our lives when we are being persuasive to make it beneficial, to help our fellow man, to recognize those times in our lives and in the lives of others then we can use our speech to help others, especially those important moments. Recognize those important moments in other people's lives that are important for them, to help guide them and push them in the right direction. Because sometimes we forget that we're living our lives interconnected to other people. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in our own lives and we go through our own moments. Like, we think that my life is important and I go from one important moment in my life to the next, and we forget that we are living around other people, and other people's stuff is just as important as ours, if not more important sometimes. And we say, what about this guy right here and what he's going through and his emotions and his feelings, and what about being a good friend to him, and what about helping him in his next moment and recognizing that, what is he going through? Sometimes we say to our friend next to us, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, how are you? I'm fine, alhamdulillah. And we're like this, oh, well, okay, good. No, are you really okay? Do you really need anything from me? How can I help you?
Yeah, and I think that point goes back to caring. And it's not to show people that you care, it's to actually care. Because when you just show that you care, that's manipulation. You don't really care about this person. You just, how are you? Oh my God, how's the family? But it's all fake.
Have real empathy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Actually to care. We're going to run out of time. Umar, I'm going to give you just 30 seconds to share one last piece of advice if you'd like to, and then we'll end the show, inshallah.
Okay, just in a very fast way, I want to say that what the brothers said about the fear and facts and focusing on these things, that actually this is psychological also. We have ego defense mechanisms. We try to go into denial and blame others. We're not going to accept advices. If people try to make us fear something, or they just talk about facts and that's it, and they don't care about our feelings.
All right, thank you very much. I want to thank all you guys here joining us once again on Let's Talk. I had a wonderful conversation. As usual, it's always lovely to have you brothers on and have these conversations. And it's lovely that you guys try to join us every week and as much as possible, inshallah. Dear viewers, I hope you guys benefited from today's episode, and I hope you guys join us for many more episodes of Let's Talk. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. And until then, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.